Welcome back, True Seeker. Trump announced shortly after the HOAX in capital letters that he would return to Butler. And I said that day, he will return by the numbers. So here we are in the ongoing George Orwell 1984 reality show where Trump returns to Butler 84 days later. And again, this 84 number becomes very magical when you learn the Kabbalistic practice of coding numbers into words. And it's as simple as running the alphabetic order forwards and backwards, and also forwards and backwards with numerology. And as you see, Butler equates to 78 and 84, whereas Jesuit equates to 84 and 78. And of course, Jesuit-educated Donald Trump, who went to Fordham, is 78 years old right now. A very interesting number. Of course, Cleveland equals 78 as well, and he's trying to become the nation's latest Grover Cleveland. Grover Cleveland was the only split-term president. He's also Trump, and the top cards in the tarot deck are Trump cards, and there's 78 cards in a tarot deck. Notice also that United States of America and the Catholic Church, again, they gave us the language and the calendar, and that's who the Jesuits serve, they both equal 84. And notice when you run the alphabetic order in reverse, the Jesuit order is also 84. And recall right after the Butler shooting, the biggest story in the MLB was Lawrence Butler the next day, who was playing in Pennsylvania where the shooting was. You might recall Kamala was in Philadelphia the day of the shooting. Trump's in Butler, PA, just outside of Pittsburgh. And the Phillies were playing the Athletics. The Athletics started out in Philly, but Lawrence Butler for the Athletics, just like the nation's capital used to be in Philly, the Athletics used to be in Philly. But Lawrence Butler was the talk of the league, hitting 3 home runs the day after the Butler shooting. He fired some shots into the outfield. Lawrence Butler, though, 84. And the Pirates also beat Obama's White Sox the day of the shooting. And, of course, Butler's just outside of Pittsburgh. You see how Pittsburgh Pirates equates to 84 when you run it forwards and 105 in reverse? Again, like we're always showing, the elections are scripted, the sports are scripted, the high ritual together. Pittsburgh Pirates, 84-105. He returns to Butler, PA, 84 days later on 10/5. Keep in mind, today leaves 87 days left in the year. Voting equals 87. The Pope's 87. We said how the Catholic Church equals 84. If you run it the other way, the Catholic Church equals 87. He returns on the day, leaving 87 days left in the year, while the Pope's 87, the first Jesuit Pope. Remember, the founder of the Jesuits is Ignatius of Loyola. Ignatius of Loyola equates to 87 as well. Now, you might recall the MLB All-Star Game was right after the shooting, and it had a lot to do with 2 teams. It had a lot to do with the Pittsburgh Pirates and a lot to do with the Boston Red Sox. And prior to the MLB season beginning, Tim Wakefield, who was drafted by Pittsburgh in 88, remember Trump equals 88, he died. And then 150 days later, his wife died. And it's interesting because World Series equals 150, Illuminati equals 150, fight equals 150. Obviously, Pittsburgh and Boston aren't in it. But I see something major that I'm going to talk about on Patreon later today with the Grover Cleveland joke. And just to remind you about this All-Star game right after the shooting that was synced with JFK. Remember, it was 45 days after JFK's birthday anniversary. Just like RFK Jr. got in the race, officially filing his paperwork on April 5th, 4/5, in a major Jesuit ritual. Remember, Robert Kennedy equals 195. He was killed on the campaign trail in 68. And then his son links up with Trump shortly after the shooting on the 195th day of the year, where the fireman who was killed's name equals 195, Corey Comparatore. But did you see the score of the All-Star game? 3 days after the shooting. Remember, on the 13th of July, under the 13 stripes, 13 weeks from the anniversary of the establishment of the Secret Service. The score was 3-5, like JFK number 35 killed on I-35. JFK was killed in Dallas. Dallas equals 113, like Scottish. Today, Trump's return to Butler is 113 days after his birthday. Remember, JFK was killed in Dealey Plaza, named after a Scottish Rite Freemason. We just talked about the ritual they just did in Massachusetts, undermining the Second Amendment 33 days before the election. The Scottish fingerprints on that as well. But JFK, who used to be mayor in Boston, of course, Boston just beat Dallas in the NBA Finals this year. It was won on the bat of a Boston Red Sox, the All-Star game this year. 5-3, Boston Red Sox 53. That was Tim Wakefield's team that he won the World Series with. The starting pitcher for the National League was Paul Skeens, the young superstar for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And you got to love that Mason Miller got the win. He got credited with the win. Mason Miller, Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. All the American sports credited as Scottish Rite Freemasons. But Mason Miller's also teammates with Lawrence Butler, who had the big day with the 3 home runs. And here's what's really interesting. The American League picked up the 48th all-time win in this All-Star game. You might recall they stayed on 47 the year before in Seattle on the 47th parallel. That game was on July 11th, and the National League won for the first time in 11 years. I was outside the stadium educating about rig sports, ritual murder. But, of course, I'm up there in the Pacific Northwest, so it was a lot easier to get to than where this year's game was. But anyway, the American League picked up their 48th win. Remember, Donald Trump and Cleveland both equal 48. The Pirates' record for the season, remember they had the starting pitcher for the game. The Pirates came into the game 48-48. Paul Skeens has the same birthday as JFK, May 29th. For the record, that's the 149th day of the year, which is the 35th prime, going with him being number 35, killed on I-35. The final score, 3-5 from the National League perspective. But notice, the game was also 48 days after Skeens' birthday. You see that? And that's why I'm going back and showing you how all this was connected and where it fit in with, the Pirates playing not far from Butler. And now here we are, the postseason's underway. It's 10/5. We're also in the time of the 105th NFL season. If you want to go back and look at everything we covered at the time of the Butler shooting, we went back and noticed something very interesting about the crossover between the Pirates and Steelers in history. Of course, 2 Pittsburgh teams who wear the same colors. But again, it's all script, you guys. That's the point I'm making. Everything is scripted. And instead of asking the same dumb questions like, how do you script a baseball game, which isn't very hard. Have you ever heard of cork bats? Have you ever heard of different cores for balls that fly further? Got to make sure Lawrence Butler jacks 3 balls. Put in the right core ball that flies an extra 50 feet. Give him the cork bat. Your grandmother can probably hit the ball out of the park. Not to mention these guys are pros. So you give them those advantages. They're pros. You watch them take BP. They hit the ball out of the park every time. Have the pitcher hang the ball over the plate, fastball right over the middle. It's batting practice. But yeah, it's the world is a stage, and a lot of people are falling for the show, and they're giving a lot of money to the show, whether it's to these candidates who don't give 2 shits about them, going to the sports game where it costs just a fortune to park these days, the overpriced tickets, the overpriced food. A lot of stadiums paid for by taxpayers, but then billionaires get to run the team and profit off these expensive venues. Anyway, people need to wake up to the big show, and we need to shut it down. Pronto. So, it's George Orwell's 1984, and I'm signing off. Till next time.